Hello guys, welcome to my complete guide for Venthyr Arms Warriors for PvE content in patch 9.0. In this video I'll be covering your step priority, what talents you need to pick, Conduits and Soulbinds, why they're good, why not, legendary choices, Enchants Consumeables, and finally your rotation for single and multi-target. I'll be explaining what and why through the whole video, and there'll be timestamps if you're looking for anything specific. So first off, we got step priority. It's actually very simple for Arms Warriors. You want to go haste till 20% and then you want to pump crit. Those two are your biz stats, and if you can't get these, you want to go mastery first, then verse as your least prioritized secondary stat. I do however recommend that you sim your own character to be 100% sure, as Blizzard implemented diminishing returns on secondary stats in Shadowlands. So yeah, you can go sim your character at raidbots.com. I'll just show you here my stat way priority. So you should do this to be 100% sure what stats to go, but in general you want to go haste and crit, and of course you want strength over every secondary stat, and you want weapon damage over every other stat in the game. Alright, so Soulbind and Conduit. Always go with Nadia. She is the most consistent and highest damage output Soulbind you can get because of Thrill Seeker alone. It gives you a lot of haste, and a lot of haste is a lot of damage. In certain fights, Thrill Seeker will proc at a specific time where you cannot use it to its full potential, and in those fights, Theater might be better, but I, in general, just go with Thrill Seeker. It's easier to play with and it deals more damage. So yeah, that's what I go. Alright, and for your first potency conduit, you want to go Ashen Juggernaut. It is by far the best simming conduit for Arms Warriors. It's just so much damage when you get a crit off your Condemn, and maybe you have Sweeping Strikes up and that's basically 2 crits. Yeah, it's just insane. Gives very, very high damage increase. The other ones are pales in comparison. For your other conduits, they don't really matter damage-wise, but I go Inspiring Presence to help my raid, and then I go Stalwart Guardian as my endurance, just so I have the option of using that by the sword more often to save myself. And in the last row here, you actually want to go with the Finesse Conduit and then go Dauntless Duelist. And the reason for this is that the 3% damage increase you get from Dauntless Duelists, in raids at least, is bigger than if you want to go with the Potency Conduit, Crash the Ramparts, which leads to a non-damage increase power in the end. So yeah, Dauntless Duelists is better than another Potency, and then you can put in another Finesse Conduit. That doesn't really matter because they all suck. That's it for Conduits and Soulbinds. Alright, so for the talents. In the first row, you have 2 choices, which is Sudden Death and Skull Splitter. In most scenarios, Skull Splitter will be the superior choice for a single target DPS, and the reason for this is it is very consistent and it'll help you to never run out of your rage. Sudden Death can be very good if you get good procs at the right times. Like if you get it in a Warbreaker window, you're gonna have a good time. So yeah, Sudden Death if you're feeling lucky, and Skull Splitter if you're feeling consistent, basically. But they're pretty equal. You can play whatever the fuck you want. Alright, so second row we have Double Time, Impending Victory, and Stormbolt. And I always go with Double Time because then you can weave in charges to increase your rage generation. You can use Stormbolt as well, which you can weave in to try and proc a Overpower or a Sudden Death charge, but it is not very consistent, and Double Time is also nice to keep uptime on specific raid encounters. So yeah, I always go Double Time. The third talent row, we have Massacre, Fervor of Battle, and Rend, and you always go with Massacre. You are a huge idiot if you go with any other thing. I have seen the Rex Troy video where he one-shots with Whirlwind, but we are not going for that here. We're going for absolute bonkers DPS and raids, so always go Massacre. It's just the best by far. Fourth row, I don't care, do whatever you like to do. Fifth row, always go Warbreaker. It is also by far the best. Collateral damage is very inconsistent in terms of how you use it, because you need a lot of uptime on 2 targets to make it work, and then you need to have more than 2 targets for your whirlwind to still be a damage increase, so it is very unusable, and cleave is just not very strong. I have tried it countless times in Mythic Plus, but it is not a damage increase. Use Warbreaker into Bladestorm in Mythic Plus. Alright, so level 45 talent row, we have in for the kill Avatar and Delicom, and you always go for Avatar. And the reason for this is because your legendary is Signet of the Tormented Kings, which is your go-to legendary in all scenarios. And the reason for this is it's just too strong, man. It's just too strong. I'll just talk about the last talent before we go into the legendary here. In the last talent row, for single and 2 target encounters, you always want to go Ravager. The reason for this is when you pop Avatar, you can proc Ravager or Recklessness. And if you proc Recklessness on your Avatar and you use your own Ravager and you get an Avatar, then you can just spam Condemns forever. And you have insane like opening damage, and that is just gonna spike your single target DPS. And of course, your single target and 2 target rotation is basically the same, except you have to use sweeping strikes as well. But if you have more targets, like in a Mythic Plus, I actually go with Dreadnought and combine it with the Conduit that makes Overpower stronger. It's called Crash the Ramparts, I think. This way you get very high consistent AoE damage. Also, you like Bladestorm compared to Ravager in a multi-target scenario. So yeah, you always go Signet of Tormented Kings to combo and to proc and to have fun, to make insane amounts of damage. So yeah, that's it for talents. Alright, next up is Enchants and Consumables. So for Enchants, you want to go 30 primary stats on chest. Doesn't matter what you have on your cloak, damage wise. I prefer to go with the pure stamina because I also PvP, and that's where it's best. Some people might go avoidance, just because you might happen to dodge something in a PvE scenario which doesn't get you killed then. So yeah, that's up to you. Then you have your rings. You want to go whatever stat you need when you sim your character. But yeah, as you know, warriors usually go with haste or crit as their main stat. And then on your weapon, you want to go with Sinful Revelation. You're a kind of bursty spec on fights, so the proc on Sinful Revelation is going to be very good for your damage. Alright, and for consumables, you obviously go a Spectral Flask of Power. You want to go either haste or crit food, depending on what your stat weights are. And then you want to go Augment Rune, of course. Then you want to use the Sharpening Stone on your weapon, of course, as well. And always use Potion of Spectral Strength. I know some people might argue that oil is better, but it's only actually strong if you use this Shadow Fury potion, but you don't want to use that as it's just the damage loss as an Armor's Warrior. You really want to go Spectral Strength. The Strength Burst gives you so much. If you're very low geared, the other combination will probably be better, but as you get up in gear, definitely go with Spectral Strength. So yeah, that's it for consumables and enchants. So let's head into some rotation stuff. First, I'll show you the single target rotation and opener, and I'll show you in slow motion so you can follow along and remember. Okay, we start by charging in, use Warbreaker, Ravager, then Avatar, Pot, and Trinket, and spam Condemn. That is literally your opener. And your legendary will proc Recklessness 50% of the time, or actually 66% of the time, because you cast both Avatar and Ravager, and you want to spam Condemn if you get Recklessness, because otherwise you're gonna Rage Cap. If you don't get Recklessness, you might need to weave in a couple overpowers, just to make sure that you don't use Condemn when you're below 40 Rage. So yeah, that's the opener here. Let's imagine the target is below 80% and we cannot execute anymore. Then you want to Mortal Strike on cooldown, and you want to overpower whenever you can. And then you want to slam when above 80 rage, and you don't want to go below 30 rage. And then you want to weave in some charges when you don't have anything to do, and just right after you get a melee hit. Alright, so the next Warbreaker window is coming up here, and we're gonna Warbreaker on cooldown here, and then Ravager. If you do it on cooldown every time, you're gonna have Warbreaker and Ravager up every second Avatar. and it's gonna time really well, so that's something to consider. All right, so multi-target is basically the same thing. Gonna slow you in slow motion again. And what I did here was basically I used sweeping strikes while charging. This saves us a GCD when we get close, so that is basically the only difference when it comes to two targets, cleave fights. And then you want to use your sweeping strikes whenever you can pair it with a Warbreaker, or whenever there is two targets. If there is not two targets in 15 seconds, you want to use sweeping strikes before Warbreaker comes up again. But yeah, that's basically it. Last, we're going to take a look at your multi-target rotation, and that is very simple, not going to be in slow motion here. You just charge in Warbreaker and Bladestorm. When Bladestorm is off, you want to sweeping strikes and you want to do your single target rotation. For this, of course, I changed my Ravager talent to Bladestorm and overpower Dreadnought, so I get a lot of multi-target damage here. So yeah, that's basically it. You just want to spam overpower, spam condemns, and you want to swap targets in Mythic Plus to make sure that you can condemn. There is almost always a condemn target, either below 35 or above 80% health. So yeah, that's what you want to do. That's it for my Venthyr Arms PvE guide. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a thing or two. Please consider liking the video if it helped you out, and subscribe if you want to be notified for future Arms PvE content. Have a wonderful day, man. Goodbye.